Let's just jump right into it. Today, in this explainer, we're taking a completely objective look at two vastly different blueprints for running the United States. On one hand, you have the transactional CEO, and on the other, the consensus-building career politician. We're going to dig straight into our curated sources to see exactly how these two totally distinct backgrounds literally shape a presidency. I mean, think about it. Long before ever stepping into the Oval Office, every president is shaped by their past, right? So we really have to ask ourselves, how does a background in high-stakes real estate versus, say, a lifetime in career politics actually alter the fate of an entire nation? It's such a fascinating lens to look through, because let's be real. The habits you build over a lifetime, yeah, they definitely don't just magically disappear the second you sit down behind the Resolute desk. Here's the roadmap for this explainer. We've got 6 key themes. We'll start with paths to the presidency, look at the business record, dive into Clintonism, and then check out their approaches to foreign policy and their roles as commanders-in-chief. Finally, we'll wrap up with 2 styles of leadership. And remember, we're strictly comparing Bill Clinton and Donald Trump through objective historical facts here. Okay, moving right along to Section 1, Paths to the Presidency, Politician versus Businessman. Before becoming presidents, these two were shaped by entirely different worlds. So looking at Bill Clinton, his rise was all about political survival. It took deep institutional knowledge and a real knack for building consensus from within the government. Now, flip that over to Donald Trump. He operated in this high-adrenaline arena of leverage, brand monetization, and corporate restructuring. We're talking about 2 completely different training grounds that, as you'll see, profoundly impacted how they would eventually govern us. All right, Section 2, the business record, focusing on risk, leverage, and restructuring. To understand Trump's governing style, we absolutely need to look at how he operated in the private sector. Okay, take a look at this timeline. Between 1991 and 2014, Trump's corporate entities, mostly his casinos and hotels, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy 6 different times. Now, for some context, Chapter 11 is a legal mechanism that basically allowed these heavily indebted businesses to keep the lights on while he renegotiated some massive debts with banks and bondholders. And here is where it gets really interesting. To Trump, bankruptcy wasn't some kind of personal failure, not at all. It was actually a highly effective strategic tool. Just like he said in this 2011 interview, he actively used these laws to shed corporate debt and protect his brand's value. He essentially treated financial distress like it was just another bold negotiation tactic. Now, as you can probably guess, financial experts are deeply divided on this track record. On one side, proponents see a super resilient operator who masterfully shifted risk around to monetize his brand name. But on the flip side, critics point to over $1 billion, yeah, billion with a B, in core losses back in the late 80s and early 90s. They highlight chronic debt crises and a heavy reliance on Wall Street bailouts just to avoid systemic banking failures. Whichever side you lean toward, there's no denying it's a legacy defined entirely by intense, high-stakes risk. Let's shift gears to Section 3, Clintonism and triangulation, the middle path. Bill Clinton's political playbook was shaped by a vastly different set of rules. To really get Clinton, we have to talk about triangulation. It's this fascinating strategy famously crafted by his advisor Dick Morris. Basically, it allowed Clinton to literally adopt his opponent's most popular ideas, while completely insulating himself from their attacks. It was all about finding that perfectly viable, winning political center. It's kind of like political judo, using your opponent's momentum to your advantage. Remember when Clinton famously declared, "The era of big government is over" during his 1996 State of the Union? Well, that single line perfectly captured his massive pivot to the center. It wasn't an accident. It was a highly calculated, honestly masterful adaptation to the changing political tides of the time. It's exactly what allowed him to survive and succeed within that super rigid institutional framework of Washington. So Clintonism in a nutshell? It was all about synthesis. He paired things like free trade and government deregulation right alongside welfare reform and strict fiscal conservatism. And the ultimate goal behind all this? Robust economic growth, which he planned to achieve through global integration and very moderate, down-the-middle governance. Moving to Section 4, Approaches to Foreign Policy, Marketplaces versus Communities. Let's see how these totally unique backgrounds actually projected American power on the global stage. Okay, this is where their pasts really, truly collide. See, Clinton viewed the world more like a community, right? A network of allies bound by treaties and shared responsibilities. But Trump, he brought that CEO mindset straight into the Oval Office. He viewed the globe as a giant marketplace where every single relationship is just a deal waiting to be renegotiated for maximum leverage and immediate returns for the US.
Operating very much as a global peacemaker, Clinton used really careful multilateral diplomacy. His goal was to diffuse regional conflicts way before they could ever harm U.S. interests. If you look at his approach, it relied heavily on patience, building consensus with other nations, and really strengthening those big international institutions over time.
Trump, on the other hand, absolutely favored disruption. He'd often bypass traditional, slow-moving diplomacy entirely. Instead, he went for these unpredictable, highly publicized, deal-focused summits designed to keep adversaries totally off balance. It was quite literally a high-stakes business negotiation tactic, but applied directly to global affairs. He was seeking dominance and a sudden shift in tone, rather than slow institutional consensus. Section 5 is up next. Commanders-in-Chief, Strategy, and the Military. Now we're going to examine how these two men approached commanding the United States Armed Forces. Just like with his business record, national security experts remain totally split here. Supporters are quick to praise Trump's aggressive push for defense funding, and they point to future-focused initiatives like creating the Space Force, plus his strong commitment to keeping us out of forever wars. But critics? They sound the alarm over his tendency to bypass the traditional chain of command. They argue that his sudden volatile troop withdrawals caused some pretty massive strategic instability around the world. A lot of this comes down to what's called a hub-and-spoke leadership model. This is super standard in early-stage businesses or, you guessed it, family-owned real estate empires. It's a system where every single decision flows directly through one central leader. And honestly, this was exactly how Trump preferred to command both his cabinet and the military. For him, it was all about having direct personal control, rather than relying on complex bureaucratic processes. By essentially treating military alliances like business contracts, Trump actually did successfully pressure allies to step up and pay more for their own defense. But, and here's why this matters so much to our broader conversation, critics warn that when you tie military protection directly to financial leverage, you dangerously erode the long-term global trust that the United States really relies on. And finally, we arrive at Section 6, Two Styles of Leadership, the Final Balance. Let's zoom out and look at the overarching macroeconomic and global impacts of these two radically different philosophies. When you look purely at the macroeconomic outcomes side by side, it's striking. Clinton's internationalist approach deeply integrated the U.S. into global markets, which helped usher in a truly historic economic expansion. On the flip side, Trump's America First approach definitely spurred immediate domestic growth and boosted corporate profits through major tax cuts. But we also have to note that his protectionist tariffs introduced intense market volatility and accelerated the national debt. Two very different means, two very different ends. So it really all boils down to one fundamental question about our future. In a rapidly changing world that is constantly facing unprecedented crises, what's the better bet? Is it safer to rely on the slow, steady consensus of established institutions, or do we need the bold, disruptive instincts of a CEO? That's the question we have to answer. Thanks for watching this explainer, and we'll catch you next time.